You son of a bitch!
Kevin Costner said no. Sean Connery almost said no, because someone forgot to fax the first page. The Berlin Wall fell while cameras were still rolling, and a film critics initially dismissed left theaters with $200 million. The Hunt for Red October, 1990. Today, we're counting down the 16 wildest facts, including the moment a novel by an insurance salesman triggered a real congressional investigation and the name buried in this film that history made famous 10 years later. Let's go. Fact 16. The captain who almost wasn't Klaus Maria Brandauer had been cast as Romeus. Costumes fitted, rehearsals underway, when a prior commitment forced him out. Brandauer made one call, his friend Sean Connery. The producers faxed the script but forgot the cover page explaining it was set in 1984, before Gorbachev. Without that context, Connery read a story that felt already obsolete. He turned it down. When producers sent the missing page, he reread it and signed on. He arrived Friday. Filming started Monday. He asked for 1 day to prepare. One missing page nearly sank the most famous submarine in film history. Fact 15. The insurance man who scared Congress. Before Clancy was a household name, he was selling insurance in Maryland and writing in his spare time. The Naval Institute Press, the only publisher who would touch it, became the first military institution in American history to publish fiction. Then Reagan read it on vacation and called it My Kind of Yarn. An obscure thriller became a phenomenon overnight. Members of Congress contacted the CIA demanding to know why the Soviets had built a silent drive first. Navy Secretary Lehman personally questioned Clancy. The answer was no. He had simply paid closer attention than anyone expected a former insurance salesman to pay. Fact 14. The role. Kevin Costner left behind before Baldwin. The role went to Kevin Costner. Costner was committed to another project and declined. That project was Dances with Wolves. It won 7 Academy Awards, including Best Picture and Best Director. The scheduling conflict that cost Costner Jack Ryan gave him the most celebrated film of his career. Baldwin got the role instead and delivered what many critics still consider the definitive Jack Ryan performance. 2 very different careers, shaped by a single number. Fact 13. 3 veterans. 1 submarine. Sean Connery had served in the Royal Navy. Scott Glenn was a United States Marine. James Earl Jones had served in the Army. 3 central figures who had actually worn a uniform before they ever wore a costume. Connery was granted commander status aboard the USS Puffer, a real nuclear submarine. He issued actual orders while the captain stood beside him. Young sailors took commands from the man who had played James Bond. That preparation isn't something a director can manufacture. It's why every order in this film sounds like it was meant. Fact 12. The trick, hidden in a single word. Early in the film, the Soviets speak Russian. Then, in a single moment, the movie slides into English without the audience noticing. McTiernan executed it with a slow push toward the officer's mouth. He lands on Armageddon, identical in both languages, and when the camera pulls back, the crew is speaking English. Every viewer accepts it instantly. Connery continued in his native Scottish for the remaining 2 hours. Nobody challenged him. Nobody seemed to mind. Fact 11. The color code. Nobody notices. 3 submarines. Cramped, dark interiors. One serious problem. In the dark, every sub looks identical. McTiernan solved it with color. The Red October, cool blues. The Dallas, warmer reds. The Konovalov, a greenish tint. Your eyes learn which boat you're on without your conscious mind registering the code. Watch the film again knowing this. You'll never lose track of those submarines again. Fact 10. The film that almost became history. The Berlin Wall fell in November 1989. Cameras were still rolling. By March 1990, the Soviet Union was visibly unraveling, and the Cold War thriller the studio had spent $30 million on was at real risk of feeling like a period piece before it opened. McTiernan reframed the film entirely, not a political story, a human one. One man defecting, one government pursuing him, another trying to help. Setting it in 1984, before Gorbachev, held the framing intact. The film earned $200 million. McTiernan had made a Cold War thriller that outlasted the Cold War by making the Cold War irrelevant to its emotional core. Fact 9. Nothing you saw was what it appeared to be. None of the underwater sequences were filmed in water. Cable-controlled models hung in smoke, light creating the illusion of deep ocean. Digital effects added bubbles and particulates. The film's most terrifying surface scene was equally fake. Ryan's helicopter transfer onto a heaving submarine deck was filmed in a California parking lot. The ocean that looks lethal was dry pavement in afternoon sunlight. A film shot in smoke and parking lots. A language switch hidden in a single word. A Cold War thriller that nearly became obsolete. Up to here, the technical illusions. From here, the human ones. Fact 8. The sound of Disneyland. The creaks, groans, and metallic pressure sounds needed to feel alive and dangerous. Frank Serafine found some of them in an unexpected place. Several sounds came from Disneyland, specifically Space Mountain's roller coaster cars as they take sharp turns, repurposed as the voice of a submarine under pressure. The tension that makes audiences grip their armrests was partly assembled from a theme park. The most claustrophobic thriller of 1990 owed a quiet debt to the happiest place on Earth. Fact 7. The anthem that doesn't exist. The film opens with a thunderous choral piece in Russian. Deep, grave, centuries-old in feeling. Audiences assume they are hearing something real. Composer Basil Polidoris wrote every note. The hymn has no history outside this movie, invented wholesale for a scene that needed to feel ancient. The Hymn to Red October has since been performed at real military ceremonies. A piece of music invented for a fictional Soviet submarine has entered the world as though it always existed. Fact 6. The Admiral who became a senator. The gruff, quotable Rear Admiral Painter is played by Fred Dalton Thompson. That authority was not manufactured for the role. Thompson was a lawyer and Watergate special counsel. He later served 8 years in the U.S. Senate and ran for the Republican presidential nomination. The man barking orders at a naval fleet had questioned a sitting president under oath. The authority on screen was the genuine article. After the Senate, Thompson returned to acting, playing judges, generals, and officials for the rest of his career. A real senator who had interrogated a president spent his final years pretending to be the kind of man he actually was. Hollywood typecast him as himself. Fact 5. The call Baldwin received on the way to his mother. The film made $200 million. Baldwin assumed he would return as Jack Ryan. He was wrong. Baldwin was traveling to Syracuse to visit his mother, just diagnosed with cancer, when the negotiations collapsed. The studio wanted open-ended scheduling. Baldwin had committed to Broadway and refused. Paramount said they could get Harrison Ford instead. They did. Gates McFadden, who had taken a small role here specifically because her part was supposed to grow in the sequel, lost it when Ford was cast. 2 careers altered in one phone call. Baldwin was on his way to see his mother when it came. Fact 4. The young actor who nearly fell apart. Standing opposite Sean Connery every day on a closed set will do things to a person. Early in the shoot, Baldwin grew convinced Connery's gravitational pull would erase him from his own breakout film. He told McTiernan directly. By his own account, he was on the edge of falling apart. McTiernan talked him down. Connery gave the younger actor room. The chemistry critics praised as the film's greatest asset nearly didn't exist. It took a director standing between them to make it possible. Fact 3. The actor nobody recognized Tim Curry is in this film. Most viewers who have seen it multiple times don't realize it. Curry plays the ship's Dr. Petrov. Soft-spoken, restrained, entirely human. He disappears so completely into the ensemble that identifying him requires freeze-framing. It is the most invisible performance of a career built entirely on being impossible to ignore. Some of the best character work is the work nobody sees. Fact 2. The novel that accidentally knew too much. When the novel was published, Navy officials noticed something troubling. Clancy had described a gradiometer on the Red October, measuring gravitational variations to navigate silently without sonar. The device was fictional. The concept was not. The U.S. Navy had developed a classified gravimetric system that worked on the same principle, running completely silent. Clancy had assembled it from unclassified sources without realizing what he'd described. Navy Secretary Lehman questioned him personally. The investigation found no wrongdoing. Clancy had stumbled onto a real classified capability using nothing but publicly available information. Nobody could prove he'd done anything wrong. Fact 1. The name in the script. Early in the film, Ramius murders the Red October's political officer. The man's name is Ivan Putin, played by Peter Firth. The name is in the script, the credits, and on screen. The film released in March 1990. Vladimir Putin was then an unknown KGB officer in Dresden, years from the FSB, a decade from the presidency. Clancy chose the surname from the available stock of plausible Russian names. No connection, no foreshadowing, just a novelist's choice and a decade of history. Nobody in that cinema could have anticipated. Pure coincidence, but the kind that makes you sit with it for a moment.